Major junior players can now play NCAA D1 hockey. This is probably the biggest rule change in all of the modern landscape of hockey, so definitely stick around to hear our take as to why this happened, what this means for you as a player, and what this means for the junior leagues moving forward. What's going on, guys? For those of you who are new here, my name is 𝗵𝗿𝗶𝗴 and I'm the CEO and founder of Advancement Hockey Advising. And today we'll be covering this breaking news here that happened last week, where basically CHL players can now play NCAA D1 hockey as of August 1st, 2025. So this is huge news. It's going to change absolutely everything in the landscape of hockey. A lot of people are denying things. A lot of people are saying, oh, it's not really going to change much. I think this is a fundamental change, and I think most experts, coaches, scouts will agree that this will change absolutely everything. So in terms of what it means for you, what's happening, what the exact rules are, we're going to cover all of this in the video here, so definitely stick around. If you haven't already, absolutely destroy that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell so you never miss another video forward. And now let's dive right into all the rule changes and what this means for you. So let's start with an overview here of all the new rules that we know so far. So basically, first, who can play NCAA hockey now moving forward? More specifically, NCAA D1 hockey. Well, that is any player playing junior hockey, including major junior now, that didn't get more than reasonable expenses worth of pay. Now, what does this reasonable expenses mean? A little bit tough. There's no clear definition on it. I think the NCAA is going to come out with a more clear definition in the next coming weeks, months, whatever. But right now, it just means that, let's say they pay your gas money, they pay some of your food, all that stuff. That's okay. But if they're paying like you $2,000 a week or something like that for sticks or something else, that's probably not considered reasonable. Or if you sign a pro contract, then you come back and you got paid a lot of money from a pro contract, that's not reasonable either. It's really like the reasonable week to week, month to month expenses that you'd expect to play and get in junior hockey. Now, I kind of alluded to this before, but can you sign pro? And the answer is yes, you can sign pro as long as you're not getting more than those reasonable expenses, right? Some players can sign pro to or some sort of a contract where only if they go play pro certain games and get a paycheck, and then that way they're not eligible anymore. But let's say they do sign and they never end up going and they don't receive that money, then technically they'd still be eligible. Again, this might all change as the NCAA comes out with more specific rules, but as of now, signing pro and not getting paid, at that point you're still eligible to play NCAA D1 hockey. Now, in terms of NILs, sponsorships, everything that goes with playing NCAA D1 hockey as of now and playing pro hockey, right now I didn't see any major changes. We did a ton of research on this, didn't really see anything, but again, they might come out with more specific rules moving forward. But as of now, it's staying with status quo, where if you play NCAA D1 hockey, you can get certain NILs and everything, but still not super clear. I think they're going to come out with more specific rules in the coming months here. Now, another big question we're getting here is, when does this rule go into effect and what are the implications of it? So it goes into effect officially August 1st, 2025, okay? But this doesn't mean that you can't go play major junior before this and you can't commit NCAA and all that stuff. What it means is that you can go and play major junior, let's say, you know, right now, or let's say in the spring, all that, and still be eligible to play NCAA D1 hockey, but just after August 1st, 2025. If you don't play major junior, technically you can go play NCAA hockey this year. Now, not many people are going to do this right in 2024, but technically you can. If you do play major junior, or you're playing major junior currently, you can go play January 2025 NCAA D1 hockey. You'll have to wait until after August 1st, 2025. So this rule doesn't really change that much. That's why you see a lot of players right now going to sign with major junior teams, playing right away so they can play at the highest level. Another big question we're getting is, will the same NCAA Eligibility Center rules apply? So the other rules like good academic standing, drugs, no gambling, all that stuff, will that still apply? And the answer is yes. It's probably going to stay status quo for now. They might come out with new rules eventually, but right now those rules are staying the same. One thing to note is that these major junior rules do not apply to NCAA D2 and D3 programs, okay? We've had a whole video on NCAA D2 that you can check out up here if you want to, but basically it's almost the same as NCAA D3 in terms of hockey. And for now, if you play major junior hockey, you cannot go play at these levels. This might change in the future. Maybe they're going to have an update on it when the NCAA comes out with more specific rules. But so far, this is what we know in terms of the specific rules that are out. There's not that much information on it. I'm kind of not the most impressed with how NCAA handled this, and we'll dive into this a little bit more in a sec. But overall, right now, it's kind of vague as to what you can and can't do. There's a few clear rules, but a lot of it's up in the air, and I think they're going to come out with more specific guidelines in the next months or so. So this is a nice segue as to why did this happen? Why did the NCAA all of a sudden decide to allow major junior players to go play NCAA D1 hockey? Well, this isn't something that's really new. It's kind of something that's been going on for a while, and it's kind of a scenario where it's multifactorial. There's a lot of factors that went into it, but from what I could understand and kind of decipher through all the data, the research and everything, there's two main things that I could see that really led to the NCAA making this ginormous shift in the world of hockey. The first big one, and probably the most important one, is that they were facing a ton of lawsuits left and right from multiple players in multiple different leagues because of eligibility, nuances where they couldn't play, because a couple players, for example, played some exhibition games in major junior and then couldn't play NCAA hockey and couldn't overturn the decision and all that stuff, while other players could. There's a lot of nuances there, a lot of and a big class action lawsuit actually this past summer that went through, and that, I think, that class action lawsuit against a bunch of different NCAA programs and the NCAA altogether, I think was the nail in the coffin after all these past lawsuits that they've had and all this pressure that they've had to basically let major junior players play NCAA D1 hockey. So I think that's one of the big ones. A second big factor that I don't think is really talked about here is Hockey Canada's need to reestablish control, okay? And what do I mean by this? This doesn't mean that the NCAA just caved and catered to Hockey Canada. I don't think that's what happened, but I think because they were facing so many different lawsuits and it was in Hockey Canada's best interest to go ahead and allow major juniors to play NCAA D1 hockey, I think they were just the final assisting factor to help push this rule moving forward. Now, why would it be in Hockey Canada's best interest to do this? Well, because recently, as you know, the BCHL left Hockey Canada. A lot of AJ teams, the top teams, went to the BCHL, which is unsanctioned. A lot of other teams, like probably the CCHL that tried to become the NAHA, a lot of teams tried to exit the Hockey Canada structure because they had a stranglehold on them. They weren't treating teams well. It was all these politics going back and forth, and a lot of teams were leaving. Hockey Canada was desperately losing control, and NCAA D1 hockey is only going on the up and up, providing more and more NHL players each year. And with all these really good leagues, junior leagues from Canada feeding NCAA D1, Hockey Canada was starting to lose its grip. So by allowing major junior players to play NCAA D1 hockey, Hockey Canada now reestablishes the control with a clear pipeline to major junior, right? And a clear pipeline now to NCAA D1 where they're going to be dominant. So for Hockey Canada, it was actually in their best interest to do this. This isn't all speculation. We actually spoke to a lot of people behind the scenes and they did in fact confirm that this did happen. So my overall opinion on this as to the rule changes, why this happened and everything, I can clearly understand why this happened, why this rule change that's going to change the landscape of hockey, why this actually went through. But overall, I must say that I'm a little bit displeased at the NCAA committee altogether. Not at the coaches. The coaches had nothing to do with this, and we talked to the coaches. We have a lot of respect for them and everything. But in terms of the NCAA committee, I don't think they really did a well thought out process here. I think they had so much pressure from different directions that they just decided, you know what, let's just pass this rule through without clearly thinking what the ramifications are going to be, because this isn't some benign rule, right? It's a big rule with huge implications that's going to really change a lot of things for a lot of players, a lot of leagues out there. And I think they should have made it a little bit more well thought out with a better plan. So hopefully they do come out with these new, more specific rules, plans, and everything moving forward. That way people will know how to react and how to go about accordingly with their hockey careers. All right, so now we covered all the new rules, why it happened, all the boring stuff. Right now it's how it impacts you guys and how it impacts the leagues. So first off, let's start with the junior leagues. How do the junior leagues get impacted from this? Well, it's pretty obvious. The major junior leagues derive a huge benefit from this decision altogether, right? They're going to get the best players now. The players that previously held back, played in the USHL or played in the BCHL, now these elite players are all going to go major junior because they do have that NCAA D1 option in their back pocket, especially if they do value education and want to go NCAA, right? They're going to be able to do this, so there's going to be no need to hold back in the lower junior A leagues now. The Q is actually going to get a huge benefit from this rule because now the Quebec players that really don't know any better, because in Quebec, unfortunately, they still just push major junior all the time, not so much NCAA D1 hockey, but those Quebec players that don't find out till like 17, 18, like my colleague Stefano can tell you that basically that's what happened to me. I had no clue about NCAA hockey till he was like 18 or 19. Those players, they actually do have a chance now because they're going to play, let's say, in the Q, and then they're like, oh my God, I want to go to school. This sounds like a great option. They get the exposure later and they're actually able to end up going, right? They're not going to have to, settle for something less at this point. So this is going to be a huge benefit for players in Quebec, I think, in the long run. In terms of the junior A leagues here, I still think they're going to have good caliber. I still think there's going to be some D1 commits that come out of it, but I do think there's going to be some sort of a trickle down effect here. So the USHL USHL, BCHL, NAHL, all of these are still going to be good spots to go to, but there will be a trickle-down effect because those elite players that used to play in those leagues, they are going to go major junior. Anybody who denies otherwise is kind of fooling themselves at this point. Those best players are going to go there because there's no consequence to going there at this point, right? It's only in their best interest to play at the highest level possible. Again, those other really good players, they're still going to stay in those junior A leagues if they can make major junior, but overall there's going to be a slight decrease in caliber, in my opinion. In terms of this trickle-down effect, this is how I think it's going to look. For the major junior leagues, they're going to be the main feeders to NCAA D1 hockey now, and then the bottom-end players in the major juniors, they're probably going to end up going U Sports at this point. For the top junior A leagues, like the USHL, BCHL, NAHL, I think their top players are actually going to still end up going play NCAA D1 hockey. I think maybe more lower to mid-end NCAA D1 hockey, but still NCAA D1. Whereas the rest of the players, I think, are going to end up going NCAA D3. I don't think they're going to be purely D1 feeder leagues anymore. I think it's going to be mainly D3 at this point. And that may be controversial, but I think that's where it's going to go. I think then after that, the remaining Tier 2 Junior A leagues in Canada and then the NCDC in the US are going to be pretty much D3 feeders. I don't think there's going to be really any D1 commits that come out of those leagues. Maybe the odd one, but I think they're mainly going to be NCAA D3 feeders at this point. And then I think the lower end Tier 2 Junior A leagues like the NOJHL, for example, and then the Tier 3 Junior A leagues are mainly going to be ACHA feeders at this point. So now the big question is, how will this actually impact you guys, the players? Well, I think in different categories of players is going to impact them in different ways. So for the elite players, the top of the top, the cream of the crop, like Connor McDavid, Connor Bedard, Sidney Crosby, all those guys coming through major junior and have the NCAA D1 option now, I think not much is going to change. It's actually just going to help them that much more. They're not going to have to make a life-altering decision at 15 years old whether to play major junior or not. Now they're just going to go, right? They're just going to go try and dominate at the major junior level, and they're going to have that NCAA D1 option in their back pocket. So for them, it's an absolute huge win. There's no risk anymore to just playing at the highest level. For the remaining players, that's where I think that trickle-down effect is going to kind of come in when playing at the junior level and then when committing to NCAA or ACHA programs, where basically you're going to play maybe slightly lower level as you would have played in the past, right? Because of that, all the good players going major junior, then trickling down the USHL, BCHL, NA, and so on, right? I think that trickle effect is probably going to happen. So, and you can just refer to the list above where I said where, kind of depending on where you play junior, average, where you're going to end up committing and all that stuff. And another really tough aspect about this rule is the players that were talking to D1 schools or players that got verbal commits. A lot of them, unfortunately, like D1 schools have backed out. We've seen it with a couple of our clients that had almost a D1 deal locked in the bank. And then because this rule was passing, D1 schools all kind of ghosted and all kind of decide, I'm going to focus major junior now, basically. So it's a little bit tough for these guys. It's tough for guys that are going to get decommits, but all I can say for you guys as players, if that does happen to you, keep pushing forward. If you keep working hard, keep dominating, keep playing at the highest level, at that point you might get an even better opportunity in the future. But it will be tough for these guys, and I have to be honest with you guys when I say that. All right, now let's talk about how this is going to impact college hockey. Well, I think it's a no-brainer that I think NCAA D1 hockey caliber will only increase now because those top players playing major junior can actually go play NCAA D1 hockey. I think in the short term it's going to increase, in the long term it will as well, because I think players, instead of going straight to pro like the ECHL or something when they're not quite ready, they can go play NCAA D1 hockey, develop, and then go play pro afterwards. So I think NCAA D1 hockey caliber is only going to increase. I think the D3 caliber will also increase as a result because those best players are all going to go NCAA D1, leaving that room to be filled by D3, right? So those players that typically would have played low end, mid NCAA D1 hockey end up not making it at this point, and then are going to go and play NCAA D3 instead, lifting up the D3 caliber. Now, with this caliber being lifted up, there's only, with the high demand coming in, all these players want to play NCAA hockey. I think it's going to call for more programs being created. So I think there's going to be a bump in NCAA D1 programs in the next 5 to 10 years, and also a big bump in the number of NCAA D3 programs as well. And maybe we might see NCAA D2 come into the mix like it is with other sports. Right now, it's kind of obsolete. They play against D3 programs, but there's very few D2 programs. I think maybe as time goes on, if NCAA continues growing in popularity, maybe there's going to be a D2 that's going to be above D3 in the future. future. Who knows? That's just me speculating, but I have a gut feeling that maybe in the next 10 years we might see this. Who knows? As for ACHA, I think it's the same principle as above. Those players that typically would have played NCAA D3 hockey at the low to mid-end level are going to play ACHA D1 now, let's say. So I think the ACHA is going to get a big boost in caliber as well. Now let's touch on youth sports. I think unfortunately for these guys, the caliber will decrease over time with this new rule, because before they kind of had a nice deal where the major junior players that couldn't go pro right away or that valued education, they would just go to youth sports, and they had a great deal going there, and the caliber was strong as a result. But now these players that are guys that, you know, need that college development, they're probably going to go NCAA D1, right? The really good ones, at least. I still think there's going to be an oversaturation for NCAA D1, and youth sports is still going to be good, I think, where those players that can't quite get a D1 commit, but that are still good, doing well at major junior, but not great, they might end up going youth sports at that point. But overall, I still think the caliber is going to decrease, and I think for youth sports to really stay relevant and really keep that top end caliber, they're going to have to step up their game. They're going to have to invest in their facilities more. They're going to have to invest in their players more, maybe provide full scholarships, all this stuff, work with major junior, try and figure out those deals to provide better scholarship opportunities and all that. But overall, for them to stay relevant and for them to keep that high caliber, they're going to have to step up their game, in my opinion. For now, I do see their caliber going down in the next 5 years, however. And last but not least, how will this impact the NHL and other pro leagues? I think when it comes to the elite players, like the cream of the crop that we mentioned before, those guys are still going to leave early, around like 18 or 19 years old, and go play in the NHL or high-end pro right away, right? For the guys that are good major junior players, I don't think these guys are going to be as tempted to go sign a pro contract and get paid, you know, a decent amount of money or whatever right away, because now they have that NCAA D1 option in their back pocket, and they can get paid more than reasonable expenses. So I think these guys are going to take longer to go pro versus signing in like the East Coast or an equivalent league in Europe or something like that. Instead, they're going to go play probably NCAA D1, develop for several years, get a degree, and then afterwards end up going pro. So I think that's going to impact the pro leagues in that way with the good players. I think the elite players are still going to go right away. And there you have it, my friends. That is the full breakdown on the NCAA Major Junior rule change that just happened last week. Honestly, again, huge news that's going to change the entire landscape of hockey. Hopefully you guys got a lot of value out of this video. Hopefully it answered some clear questions, burning questions that you guys had as to the new rules and the impacts it's going to have on you guys as players and as parents, as coaches all together. We're going to release another video soon where I interview basically a coach, talking to them about you know, how this is going to impact NCAA hockey, all of this, so stick around for that. If you enjoy this video, absolutely destroy that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell so you never miss another video moving forward. You can click up here or up here to watch another video. And with that, my friends, thanks so much for watching. We'll catch you on that next one.